The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to today's Live Lab Learning from Autodesk from Applied Software. My name is Ken Driscoll, and today's topic is why your Civil 3D implementation is not working. So the first thing that I want to do is just give you a brief overview. Again, my name is Ken Driscoll. I'm a Civil Application Specialist for Applied Software, and here's just a little background information in terms of my experience. I'm a Civil 3D instructor with over 20 years of technical and hands-on experience. I'm FDOT certified. I'm a product support specialist, an Autodesk implementation expert, certified Autodesk instructor, and also a certified professional. As a piece of information, we do offer multiple classes in reference to FDOT and regular classes, and also customized classes. So this is just a kind of list of different classes that we offered in reference to the infrastructure design suite. Specifically, we do offer classes that are specified for Florida Department of Transportation and commercial and residential, also in industrial. We also have utilities and civil infrastructure. Here again is a list of items that we offer in reference to Civil 3D survey, fundamentals, FDOT workflows, plan productions, and also update classes, whether it's AutoCAD, Civil 3D, or anything under the AutoCAD platform. We also offer classes in reference to Autodesk InfoWorks, InfoWorks 360, Autodesk Storm and Sanitary Analysis, and then Autodesk Vehicle Tracking, which are the newest releases from the Autodesk platform of products. And then also you can always visit Live Lab Learning at any point in time if you wanted to seek out other classes, whether it was AEC or infrastructure or manufacturing. So the first thing that I want to talk about is there's really 5 technology implementation obstacles that a typical client would go through. So as an example, I'm going to jump around a little bit, and then you can hold your questions for the end, and then I'll try to address anyone's questions in reference to the webinar. Okay. So the first thing is what happens when technology is implemented properly. That's one of the questions. One of the questions is what happens when an attempt to introduce a new piece of hardware or software into your workflow fails. So like any other implementation, let's say you wanted to put in a new accounting system. That requires transition from one application to another, and the same with Civil 3D. Also, simply put, nothing good comes of that. So one of the things I'm going to talk about today is the top 5 technology implementation obstacles. So, obstacle 1, typically there's a lack of owner management support. And by far, this is the most significant obstacle. It's very common that technology implementations, specifically projects, has roots in the end users who are basically entrenched in the product on a day-to-day basis. Now they tend to hear about or hear about products or processes that will benefit their companies and ultimately bring attention to those who have the authority to make the project happen. However, typically, regardless of origins, new technology, investment, most people who write those checks are not behind the implementation. It's unlikely that it's going to succeed. Owners, management must be willing to commit time, money, and resources to make the implementation work. If they aren't willing, the project should just be postponed until management provides its full support. Secondly, again, this is by far the most significant obstacle. Secondly, obstacle 2 is typically there's a lack of end user support. You know, in a way, this is like the flip side of obstacle number 1. Often owners identify a new technology that they will perceive or improve a company's efficiency. And they'll put their full support behind it. But on one hand, the end users, the doers, who will literally use the new technology, must also be willing to put an effort and make it work. Now, there's possible reasons for resistance, which include fear of learning a new product, which is number 1. Being pushed out of the comfort zone after they've used the product for many years, and even, you know, a dislike of a brand or a product, perhaps even a competitive product. Even nightmares of past technology integration projects that have failed in the past. Whatever the reason, there needs to be a team of enthusiastic end users that must be a part of the implementation, or the project has little chance to be successful. Obstacle number 3, underfunding the implementation. This is known as trying to do it the cheap way. Now, it's rare that technology these days can be taken out of the box and immediately introduced into a company's workflow with little or no effort. Therefore, you know, successful implementation depends on proper training and consulting services. Now, consulting services are rarely a one-size-fits-all. While companies may have general commonalities, I mean, each company has a specific way of doing things that differentiate themselves from others. And additionally, fees paid to a consultant are minimal compared to the opportunity cost associated with the staff not doing billable work and learning a new technology. Attempting to integrate advanced technology without planning for proper funding for the consulting, training, lost productivity during integration, it's a recipe for failure. Obstacle number 4, underestimating the effort involved. Now, this obstacle ties specifically with the first 3. The entire company needs to understand the effort required to fully integrate new technology so the desired goals can be achieved. Now, a major cause of underestimating effort is the lack of communication among people and departments involved, especially at the onset of technology implementation specific to that project. Communication is vital. Now, input from all departments, whether it's field, whether it's the office, whether it's engineering, whether it's surveying, etc., and even from personnel at high levels, must be elicited and also incorporated in that implementation plan. Lack of this planning and underestimating this effort pretty much guarantees failure. Now, this obstacle ties in tightly again with the first 3. Now, obstacle number 5, which is the last but not least of the technology implementation obstacles, is selecting the wrong implementation partner. Now, some companies have built-in and staff that's required to implement new product or system with little outside help. Most companies, however, don't have the luxury of these dedicated resources. And even those that do still must partner with the right vendor when purchasing technology. Now, the key word here is partnering. Now, many resellers can offer an actual product and probably will to try to aggressively compete for your business. But as a trusted advisor, successful implementation depends not only on choosing the correct product, but choosing a consultant who will partner with you to ensure your success. Now, an effective partner will understand that technology as a whole, all of its intricacies, and more importantly, your business and the tasks you must accomplish in your daily routine. So one of the things to remember, do your homework, get the best in several proposals you have for the best chance of selecting the right partner. Again, understanding the hurdles that you may encounter when implementing new technologies is the first step in avoiding them. So just like any construction, any engineering project, both good planning and execution are required when implementing new software or new hardware. So plan for these obstacles, give your project the best chance at success. Now, deploying an implementation such as Civil 3D. So first, you need to select a pilot project. So a pilot project with Civil 3D shouldn't be overly complex and not overly simple. So one of the things that I typically talk to users about is, you've had an old project or you have a project that your clients won't be calling you for. We can integrate that in the scheme of the implementation as a pilot project. So that way, being more specific, you don't have to start using Civil 3D on your largest project in history. On the flip side, again, you don't want a cookie cutter where you don't have a chance to actually put the software in its use through specific real world engineering processes. Another thing to consider, your project team is going to be a bit of a learning curve. So naturally you would want to budget for that developmental time in addition to your standard designing time. So a project team for this typically needs to be specified in reference to your civil site. So a team needs to be specified in terms of who's going to take on this project. Definitely don't want to put everyone on the project. Just a specific group of individuals who are comfortable, who you feel that want to take the product and your development to the next level. Secondly, CAD standards. Everyone has somewhat of CAD standards established at their company. But seriously, launching Civil 3D, you need to know what CAD standards are. In Civil 3D, much of drafting is done automatically. You have graphical elements of Civil 3D, entities defined by a Civil 3D style. For instance, Civil 3D knows the layer, the place, the parcel line, what it's based upon. Everything is represented with the Civil 3D style. So since graphically standards are so imperative to deploying Civil 3D, you want to table the thought of Civil 3D while you iron out some of those standards. Most of the thinking in Civil 3D during standardization will likely cause more harm than good. On the other hand, you will likely prove to be more of a distraction than aid during that standardization process. So we at Applied Software, we want to focus on how to illustrate those things in reference to styles, how to integrate your standards into styles so the transition from the product that you've been using to Civil 3D will be a minimal one. Also, you want to consider adopting the national CAD standards. Right out of Civil 3D, there's an NCS template that has truly taken the root over the several years, and consequently, the CAD industry, most users are trying to integrate the national CAD standards. So quite simply, to become the minority in a few years if you don't adopt that national CAD standards. Again, I mentioned Civil 3D styles. Again, every graphical entity of Civil 3D is configured by a style. So be sure you have some type of standard before you begin tackling Civil 3D styles. There's a pre-warning out there that, styles are not especially intuitive to configure. That's why you need a partner to help you develop, schedule out these things. Given a good graphical CAD standard, a good consultant, you'll be able to help configure styles in a relatively short period of time. And again, shelling out a few bucks for a consultant, for a reseller, is undoubtedly going to pay off in the end. And then here at Applied Software, what we do is we create styles, but then we show you how we create those styles. You just don't throw a bunch of styles at you that have already been created, because you might want to transition into creating your own styles at some point. And then, importantly, training is critical. So if you're serious about making your Civil 3D deployment a success, you're going to need training. Under a Civil 3D deployment, you want something that offers more than training. You want a partner that's willing to grow with you over a period of time so you can transition. Not someone who just wants to throw a CAD class at you for 3 days and say, okay, now there's no way. That's really not the learning process. Checkpoints, initiatives, those are the things that get you through a project, a life cycle of a project. Even if it's not an option, any decent training course is going to provide some level in terms of how to complete some of the Civil 3D procedures. And then I talked about, again, you want someone to actually partner with you in transitioning, not only for week number 1, but week number 14, best practices, lunch and learns, things that help you grow and develop as a company to allow you to transition into your new software. And then also post-deployment, and of course, your consultant. Now, why I highly recommend hiring a consultant, there are a few things you need to watch out for. So, although most of the times consultants out there, they're going to present you with an absolutely stunning proposal, promising you your entire firm is going to be working with Civil 3D in a short period of time. But one of the things that you want to keep in mind, specifically with Civil 3D, or any implementation for that matter, it's not as simple as putting a DVD into a disk drive and then calling it a day. Now, again, successful implementation of Civil 3D, you need someone there readily accessible, someone who can answer your questions, someone who can get online, someone who will come to your office, someone who knows about working with real-world designs. You need a consultant, you need a partner, one such as Applied Software, that will come in, conduct training, install Civil 3D, assess your business, assess your business needs, collect items to check. Unless your designers can get quick answers on how to complete their site, they're not going to know without a question. Civil 3D is the worst piece of software on earth. Worst piece of software created, because when you don't know, typically that's the kind of response you get. Now, assuming that you do have someone on staff who knows Civil 3D. Avoid getting users getting disgruntled at software. Surely arrange some support options with your consultant. Again, I mentioned CAD standards, so national CAD standards, Civil 3D templates, training. I mentioned consultants. Again, most consultants will have a good understanding, but of course, again, I talked about Applied Software being able to partner with you, to transition with you, become your trusted advisor. Again, there's some sites out there that provide some resources, Autodesk University, community sites in reference to Autodesk, and then there's some books out there. But again, these resources can be specifically pushed to you within that implementation. So again, things to consider, there's also blogs out there. There's specific websites, that you can go to in reference to Civil 3D. And I know there's many resources out there, webcasts, again, civil engineering communities. There's a lot of resources out there. I can outline some of them and push them out to you. But again, hopefully this brief outlook has afforded you some idea in terms of what you're going to be looking for. And I can't emphasize it enough, in terms of implementing Civil 3D. There's no easy button. It's not an easy task. It's something that requires that you demand from a reseller, planning, training. Of course, there's money involved. And then, instructors who know real-world scenarios, practical, someone who's used the software, insights, someone who's used the software in development. That's a vital combination that's needed to successfully implement your Civil 3D into your company. So, one of the things that I'm going to do is I am going to show you a couple of sites just to kind of give you a feel for some of the things that you can do with Civil 3D outside of just really things out of the box, and then I'll address any questions that you have. Okay, so first thing that I want to do, just really quick, again, most of you have Civil 3D 2015, or you have a previous version of Civil 3D. So again, just kind of showing some of the simple things that you should be able to do, inside, outside of an implementation, specifically, for instance, grading. You want to be able to show some sites in terms of what you can do with grading, how you can really develop out a site, real world scenarios. You want to be able to look at things in 2D, also in 3D. I mean, you want to look at sites that have really been created, complex designs. So, as I hit escape here, and I'm just going to jump to my next drawing here. So again, something as simple as grading in 2D. You can clearly see there on the left. And then in 3D. So once my machine catches up, I'm going to jump from 2D and this 3D orbit into another drawing. So again, real world scenarios, whether you're moving from Land Desktop to Civil 3D, whether you're moving from a previous version of Civil 3D to a current version of Civil 3D, it can be done. So, just real quick here, just make sure all the internet and information is still currently going. Let me double check to make sure there aren't any questions. Okay. So what I am going to do, once this comes up, so what I'm going to do is open up the forum to questions as I kind of go through these other items. So are any questions out there, Dean, thus far? Okay. So as I move to my next drawing here. Okay. So, and again, if you wanted to, they can type in questions also at the bottom. But clearly here you can see a little bit more complex site where you can see the 2D site, and you can see how advanced a corridor is in reference to the corridor model there. And then you can see on the right side the 3D version of that site. So just kind of moving around in reference to from site to site, and that takes a second, so I'll make sure everyone's able to see. Just clearly being able to look at some of the advanced grading, and let me just move this out of the way here. Some of the advanced grading around this site, some of the intersection and corridor modeling. Again, not the typical right out of the box that most will be doing in reference to this complex grading, because you can clearly see there's some retaining walls and things like that also in my site, and specific grading. And then also with 2015 you can see clearly on the left side that you do have aerial photography now that you can geo reference and locate. You know, once I come out of this, so we'll give it a couple minutes here. Okay. So one of the things I also wanted to show you here, again, 3D modeling, complex intersections, sidewalks, that the corridor, drive and bike paths, complex intersections, complex corridor, all one corridor. Okay. And we'll switch drawings again. And again, a lot of new functionality that's been implemented into 2015 that we're going to make reference to. Again, most users, typically I don't suggest to use 2015 until after the first service pack has been pushed out by Autodesk, but I've had no issues with 2015 since its installation. Okay, so we'll give it another minute here. And we'll jump right to there. So if you're using multiple drawings, you can see clearly up at the top you have tabs up at the top, but you can select Control tab to move through drawings also. Let's go over here. Just jumping around a little bit and make sure everyone's internet access speed is getting everything. I'm just doing a automatic save right now on multiple drawings. Okay. So again, if I come back, Let's make sure. So is there any questions, Dean?
Still no questions. If people have questions, they can put them in at the question box on the toolbar.
Okay.
But none right now.
So what I am going to do is I'm going to do a quick jump over here. I'm going to stop this process, and I'm going to jump right back. And so I have multiple products running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up that first two drawings again so we can clearly see some of the differences in reference to what I was stating. And again, all these are part of, again, real world projects that have been created using Civil 3D and those who have implemented Civil 3D. And we'll just start that right back up. Let's make sure everyone's still here. Okay. And we'll jump right back here. Again, one of the things that you also can consider is we do also have a live lab learning on YouTube. So you can subscribe to our channel, and most of the webinars that I will be and have been presenting are on YouTube's for live lab learning. If you wanted to look at previous ones also. Yeah, let's just go back here. And
I do have one question.
yes, sir.
Someone's asking if they can use their old 2012 profile from an older version and import it into 2015.
Yes, so the profile really manages settings and things like that. Now let's say specifically if you wanted to use, you know, a specific ribbon, or you didn't want to use ribbons. Now you would be making reference to a CUI file, and the CUI file can be exported from a previous version straight into Civil 3D. So you can do those things also. So typically what happens, if that's what you're making reference to, so there's a couple of things here. Under options, just as a quick example, under options, there's a profile for Civil 3D, and there's one that you can create that you can export out. So again, a profile has an ARG extension that can be shared to other users. Okay. On the other hand, a CUI file, which makes reference to the interface, once I select CUI and hit enter, then it brings up this dialog box, and this will take a second. It brings up this dialog box, and for instance, there's a all customization file, but if you wanted to push any of these, once this catches up, if you wanted to push any of these CUIs, any of this ribbons or data to another machine, I can export this out and push it to another machine. Okay. So there's a couple things there. You have a CUI that you can export out, and you have a profile that you can export out in reference to the settings. Okay. So let's move this down here, and so clearly, Civil 3D has multiple styles. So being able to create this kind of look is not going to be straight just out of the box. And I'm just going to open up one more drawing here. So as a quick tip, I went up to open, and then it shows enter name of drawing. What that is that is a file within Civil 3D that is called File DIA. So File DIA. And basically that needs to be set to 1. So anytime you lose, it's a system variable in CAD, anytime you lose your dialog boxes, that may reset to 0. It needs to be set to 1. And then you can come right back up, and now you have all your dialog boxes. That's just a tip for today. And then also now, we're going to look at just a little bit more of a complex drawing. So there is that partial. We'll come back here. Just as some quick examples. We'll open this site, and this is just a read-only site. So just quick things that, again, aren't the typical straight out of the box, where it requires drainage, requires some grading, has some pipes in it, has a building in it, referencing specific to that drawing. So we're just going to open up a quick drawing here. So again, just the ability to kind of envision a site. So clearly you can see contours. You can see some three-dimensional trees from the survey. And then based upon that data, I just want to be able to look at this site in 3D. So one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm just going to ignore any unresolved references. And I'm just going to come back up here. And I'm going to go on my model layout tab just to kind of give you a view of, again, some of the typical things that you would want to be able to do outside of something straight out of the box. So again, I'm just going to go to my model layout view. I'll pick model. Clearly I had to pick that. And that takes a second. And all I'm doing is kind of switching from paper space to model space to kind of give you a different perspective in reference to the site. So clearly you want to be able to distinguish and determine. So that's actually a Revit model that has been brought into Civil 3D. So again, pipes, lighting, poles, trees, surface model. Again, just something that's not typically out of the box with Civil 3D. Again, based upon someone who has been involved in a Civil 3D implementation in terms of what they want to be able to do. And then as an example, if I right click, this takes a second to catch up. If I right click and just go to free orbit, then it brings, you can clearly see, you know, my pipes and structures underneath my site for my sanitary and my storm. Okay. So again, some flexibility in terms of what you want to be able to view and see in reference to that site. And we'll just go right back. Okay, pretty straightforward. Right click and select exit. So again, to rehash and refresh, you know, there's several things that I talked about. So the first thing that I talked about was this ideal of 5 technology implementation obstacles. So 1, lack of owner management. 2, lack of end user support. Obstacle number 3 is underfunding for the implementation. Companies thinking you can just jump into Civil 3D. Obstacle 4 is underestimating the effort involved. And then obstacle number 5, and last but not least, is selecting the wrong partner. Again, we want to partner with you so we can transition. And transition requires more than just a 3-day class. It requires a plan. It requires an implementation. It requires time. The first thing that typical companies go through who jump to Civil 3D is they go through this giant bell curve where they lose productivity and efficiency because you don't know Civil 3D. And that's why you need a partner to help you grow and guide you through that transition. I also talked about deploying Civil 3D, maybe on a small pilot project, knowing CAD standards, understanding Civil 3D styles. Training is critical. And then post-deployment, what was successful? What were some of the checkpoints? What did we do great? What were things that we need to do better? Those things have to be accounted for. And again, I want to thank you for spending some time in reference to our webinar. And also, I talked about Live Lab Learning. So you can go to livelablearning.com and also take a look at our classes that we offer. And if you have any questions, you can send questions to our Live Lab Learning and also to us. So thanks again for spending time in reference to why your Civil 3D implementation fails. Thanks again.